What's good? It's Woog. We got resolution, at least officially. I would say unofficially, this doesn't feel resolved, but there was a winner in Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol, and Artur Beterbiev won a majority decision, 115 to 113, 116 to 112, and then the third judge had it a draw, 114 to 114. Congratulations to Artur Beterbiev for becoming the undisputed light heavyweight champion, first undisputed light heavyweight champion in the 4-belt era. And I was saying in both of the previews, the early thoughts preview or the analysis video, and then the final prediction video, that this fight was so important because we never got resolution in the last generation of light heavyweights. We never got Adonis Stevenson versus Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev got knocked off by Andre Ward at the end of 2016, beginning 2017, and then Adonis Stevenson got dethroned and badly injured, hospitalized against Gvozdyk in 2018. So these are the two, Beterbiev and Bivol, to emerge in the wake of that Stevenson versus Kovalev era. I know a lot of people will also consider Andre Ward, but he had such a short stint at light heavyweight. He basically came up for 168. He fought a couple of fights. I think he beat Sullivan Barrera as well. And then he had the 2 fights with Kovalev, and then he retired. But Artur Beterbiev is now the undisputed light heavyweight champion. And I mean, my first gut feeling when I saw that decision, I felt terrible for Dmitry Bivol. And it's not that this was a robbery, but it doesn't have to be a robbery to leave a bad feeling in your stomach, because you watched what you watched and you formulated your opinion by watching the 12 rounds of action on who was deserving of being crowned undisputed champion based on that fight. So no, this wasn't your quintessential robbery. There have been more decisive looking wins that were not adjudicated as such. And hats off to Dmitry Bivol for taking it all in stride. I mean, you want to talk about being classy, a true professional, gracious in defeat. Dmitry Bivol was all of these things. Like, he said nothing that reflected how I was feeling after watching that fight and hearing that decision. He gave us none of that. Eddie Hearn obviously spoke up and thought that that judge that had it 116, 112 should not be judging fights anymore. But again, just because it's not a flat out robbery doesn't mean that the deserving winner wasn't crowned the winner. And this has nothing to do with my prediction. I did pick Dmitry Bivol to win via decision. I thought that either Bivol was going to win a close decision or that Beterbiev was going to win a close decision. And I just didn't think this one was going to result in a stoppage. I just felt that these guys were too elite, too on top of their game for one to have that big an advantage over the other. I thought that even if Beterbiev got going, that he would probably get going in the later rounds and would win enough rounds and would have stolen enough of the early rounds to edge a decision. Maybe a knockdown, not knockout, but a knockdown of Dmitry Bivol, something like when Jarrett Hurd knocked Arislandi Lara down in, I believe, the final round of their super close unification fight. I thought that maybe we would get a Beterbiev knockdown of Dmitry Bivol, but I thought that Bivol was going to bank a lot of rounds and was going to be resilient enough, high IQ enough, poised and composed enough to be able to withstand the avalanche that is Artur Beterbiev, and would be tough enough to go the distance and then take a close decision. And quite frankly, that's what I saw take place with my own 2 eyes. And look, a lot of people picked Beterbiev to win by stoppage, and I get that, although Dmitry Bivol was the slight betting favorite. And you saw that even though Bivol was a slight betting favorite, there were times in the fight where you saw the live odds pop up and then it looked like it was an even fight, which tells you that Beterbiev was having success. It's just that through the first 3 rounds, I thought that Bivol won 2, maybe 3 rounds, 2 out of 3 at least. And then out of the first 5 rounds, I thought that Bivol won at least 4 of those rounds. 3 at the least. you could conceivably have Bivol winning 5, but you know, a couple of those rounds were pretty close. There were a couple rounds that could have gone either way, but I thought that by and large, Bivol was stronger in the first half of the fight and Beterbiev was stronger in the second half of the fight. But I thought that Bivol took more rounds in the second half of the fight than Beterbiev did in the first half of the fight. And look, Bivol landed half of his power punches. First of all, Beterbiev threw like 200 and something more punches, total punches. A lot of them were jabs. But Beterbiev threw way more punches than Bivol. Bivol landed a few more punches. So in terms of efficiency, Bivol was the cleaner boxer between the two. I mean, that's what makes it so disappointing for me to see that result, is that Bivol boxed, he boxed a masterclass. And before I start talking more punch stats, it's one of those things where if Beterbiev is truly winning these rounds and is winning this fight, you would know, right? At least that's the idea, because Beterbiev would have Bivol hurt, would have Bivol retreating, would have Bivol holding, and you would get the impression that Beterbiev is just rolling downhill at this point, rolling downhill on Bivol, and that Bivol looks like he's on the brink of breaking. We never got that moment, did we? Even in the moments where Bivol was covering up and circling, we never got the moment where it's like, oh, Beterbiev looks like he's really about to stop Bivol, which really speaks to Bivol's discipline, his composure, all of those things, again, and his abilities. Like, this was the... I'm going to get back to the broadcast and Timothy Bradley's call. Sometimes I like Bradley. Sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, between him and I think it was Bernard Osuna, they were just sliding Bivol and his effectiveness so many times, and they would just kept on hearkening back to, oh, but he's not a big puncher. Too bad he's not a big puncher, and he might not be a big puncher, but he's this, and this. I'm like, if he wasn't a big puncher, and no, he's not a Beterbiev like puncher, but if he wasn't an effective hard puncher, Beterbiev wouldn't look like he's trying to figure this out while he's circling, thinking about his entry points. Beterbiev was getting tagged in this fight, and if anything, if anybody looked like they were on the brink of maybe wilting and getting stopped, I thought that was Beterbiev, who was getting caught with like 3 punches out of a 5-punch combination, getting his head snapped back repeatedly with jabs, and just looking like he wasn't seizing control of the fight. This fight didn't look like a Beterbiev fight. Maybe not until maybe the 11th and 12th rounds. That started to look more Beterbiev-ish. But, you know, Beterbiev took a round off just before that. Either the 9th or the 10th, I thought Beterbiev kind of took off. But Beterbiev was looking like he started rolling downhill a lot more in the 11th and 12th. But this really felt like a pro Beterbiev broadcast, and even them, Osuna and Bradley, thought Bivol won the fight by the end of the fight, and Bivol doesn't get the decision. So again, this one, yeah, might have been a 1 round makes a difference, 115, 113-ish type of fight, but still I feel like the wrong guy got awarded the win. So I was saying, yo, if Beterbiev is really winning this fight, you would know, because it would show in Bivol's body language and everything like that. He would look like a Beterbiev opponent, traditionally, historically. But then I wanted to be cautious of taking that approach, because it's that type of thinking that gets Triple G robbed against Canelo in the first fight, and even maybe in the second fight, where you see Triple G relegated to being a jab-heavy puncher in the back half of the fight, trying to win rounds in a way that we're not used to seeing Triple G have to try to win rounds behind a jab and trying to outwork the guy with the jab. Usually we see Triple G rolling downhill on his opponent, and that just wasn't the case, especially in their second fight. So I was trying to be cautious and say, let me not assume that because Beterbiev doesn't appear to be hurting Bivol and Bivol doesn't appear to be in trouble, that Beterbiev can't still win some of these rounds. So I was being cognizant of this, and I was watching this fight with a lot of family, and they were being cognizant of this. And the takeaway after the final bell of the 12th round was that Bivol pulled it off. He did what a lot of people didn't think he could do. He not only lasted the 12 rounds, but he outboxed and beat Beterbiev in a close, competitive fight where Bivol didn't wilt, didn't break, didn't didn't run, right? Even if he was circling in moments, you saw him standing his ground. And I felt like he was going to stand his ground. He was going to have to come forward throwing combinations at many different times. And he did that. Again, I'm not a huge stat guy. Like, stats tell you something, they don't tell you everything, right? But Bivol, again, 50% of his power punches landed. And if you want to talk about effective jabbing versus ineffective jabbing, Bivol landed 23% of his jabs to Beterbiev's 13%. Beterbiev landed 47 out of 376 jabs. That's 13%. Bivol landed 11 more jabs, 58 out of 255. Not a great percentage, but a significantly better percentage than Beterbiev, 23% of his jabs. And again, 50% of his power punches landed compared to Beterbiev's 29% power punches landed. And here's another thing. Beterbiev was relentless, right? He was coming forward. He was throwing a lot of punches, evidently. He threw 682 to Bivol's 423 punches. But I was wondering what Beterbiev's knee was going to appear like. Like, was he going to come in with a brace? Was he going to look like his movement to one direction or the other was compromised? It didn't appear to be the case. He seemed to move pretty well, but Bivol is such a good mover. You saw him moving laterally, and then he would stop and fire, and then he would move forward even more, and he would respond to Beterbiev's power punches by staying in the pocket and throwing shots right back at Beterbiev in the pocket. Like, sometimes when they were in the pocket, he was knocking Beterbiev out of the pocket. Again, I got the impression that if anybody was going to break in this one, just looking at what I was looking at, I thought that it might. I didn't think that it would be, but I thought that it might be Beterbiev because of how he was looking like he was reacting to some of the very clean punches that Bivol was landing. Beterbiev's activity was a lot of swarming activity, and I can't quite put my finger on what Bivol did to take Beterbiev's overhand right away. I don't know if it was because he was just circling away from it. I don't think it was that simple. I think that it was a lot of it had to do with Bivol's ability and it sounds simple, but his ability to keep his damn hands up. Like, as many punches as he was throwing and as many punches as Beterbiev was throwing, usually you see elite fighters, like very good fighters, who want to keep their hands up. They just can't keep their hands up the whole fight. So by round 7, 8, 9, the hands start coming down, especially as the other guy worked the body. And maybe Beterbiev should have done more work to the body. He did some to the body, and some of that body work looked like it had an immediate impact on Bivol. There were a couple times where I saw Bivol circle away in a way that made me think, oh, he hurt Bivol with that one. And then Bivol would tie up and then move again and try to buy some time. There were some very effective body punches. There were also some really nice body punches from Bivol. Sometimes he would sit on the right hand and he would just drive that right hand right into Beterbiev's belly. He did that really well a few times and backed Beterbiev up with some of that body work. But if Beterbiev maybe went to the body more, he could have perhaps brought Bivol's hands down more. But I don't want to understate how difficult it is to keep your hands up in a 12-rounder against a guy like Beterbiev, but Bivol did that. He had his hands up. So a lot of times when Beterbiev would throw the shots up top, this is another thing. Beterbiev was just swarming Bivol with punches, but so few, in a lot of those combinations, so few got through. Now, Bivol did remark that his eye was all fattened and swollen up because Beterbiev was punching and throwing so hard that even when Bivol sometimes would have the gloves up, the impact of Beterbiev's glove hitting Bivol's glove hitting Bivol's face would cause a swelling to the eye. So that tells you something about Beterbiev's power, which Bivol did acknowledge. But when it comes to landing cleanly, yes, Beterbiev punches like a truck. So even if you have the hands up, it could still do some damage. But Beterbiev was throwing so many punches, and you could tell that Bivol was doing a good job at avoiding them, at blocking them, at moving away, at absorbing and rolling with them. He was doing a lot of good things that would kind of nullify what is usually the secret sauce and usually works super well for Beterbiev. That's why Beterbiev breaks so many of his opponents, and the reason why he wasn't able to break Bivol. Bivol is just that good defensively at range management, at keeping his damn hands up and moving. Not to mention the offense. People talk like Bivol's offense is the icing on the cake. I've seen Bivol fight for like several years now, since he was beating like Sullivan Barrera like a long time ago. I'm talking like well before the wins against Joe Smith Jr. and Jean Pascal. Before that, like, Bivol is an offensive machine. It just so happens he's got very skilled defense and excellent ring IQ. I mean, if anything, he's a little Lomachenko-like, different style, but in the sense that he's a very accurate puncher. He's a good defender. And I would say that he starts off his fights a lot better than Lomachenko, especially Lomachenko in recent years. Dmitry Bivol in all of his fights just appears to be in control. It's that ring generalship that people talk about. Bivol, I've never seen the fight where Bivol looks like he's really losing shape and confused about how to re-seize control of the fight. Bivol always appears to be more or less in command, and I thought that even in this fight against Beterbiev, it was Bivol who was in control of the action, who was landing the more clean, effective punches, even if Beterbiev at different times looked like he was the one pushing the pace because he kept on coming forward. Even though, I mean, he was reluctant a lot of times. When he was getting tagged, he would start moving before coming forward. But, you know, that's pretty much sticking to Beterbiev's script. He often circles, backs away, and then re-enters the pocket and relaunches the attack. But it was Bivol who I thought was in control of this one. So yeah, I know I'm talking about all the things that Bivol did right, and we're talking about a Beterbiev win here. But this, again, was a competitive fight. It's just, look, I'm just going by how I felt as I was watching the fight and then hearing that result. Bivol won the story of the fight. And I know, you know, I wasn't totally going round by round judging it. I will rewatch this fight, and I'll probably do a live chat where we could discuss how you guys had it scored and actually do a round by round analysis. But again, there were a couple close rounds. I just thought that, you know, at the end of the fight, I feel like most people, not just me, not just the commentators of the pro Beterbiev commentary, let me know if you thought that it was a pro Beterbiev call. Like, if you listen to how they were talking about the fighters in the first few rounds, you would have thought that it was Beterbiev versus some random B-side. Like, that's what it sounded like call-wise. It sounded like, yeah, Bivol's doing some nice things boxing, but he's not hitting hard. He's not doing anything effective. It sounded like Munguia versus Vladimir Shishkin, even though Shishkin did have, he fought a pretty good fight against Munguia, but that's the type of call that I would have expected from Munguia versus Shishkin, not Beterbiev versus Dmitry Bivol, the person who's held a share of the WBA belt since like 2017 before becoming, I believe, full champ in 2018, something like that. But yeah, let me know how you thought, you know, this fight played out in terms of what you saw versus what you saw on the call. Like, not only the broadcast, but the judge's result. Did you think that this was scored fairly? Again, 116 to 112 sounds crazy to me. But did you think that Beterbiev was deserving of a decision win in this fight against Dmitry Bivol, given what we saw? Again, I don't want to say that because Beterbiev didn't drop him, didn't stop him, that Beterbiev therefore can't win. My picks in the predictions were either Bivol via close decision or Beterbiev via close decision. It was just a matter of who was going to bank more rounds. Was there a knockdown scored? But I definitely thought that this one was going to go the decision. I just have that much respect for both of these guys' guts, IQs, experience, abilities, all of that. But yeah, let me know what you thought about this one. It really doesn't sit well with me. I feel like the wrong guy was crowned undisputed light heavyweight champ. It was a close fight, and Beterbiev is very deserving. I mean, he's had a tremendous career. Both of these guys are Hall of Famers. It just doesn't feel like, given what we saw in the ring, that Dmitry Bivol deserves to be walking away from this fight with a 1 in the loss column. I feel like Dmitry Bivol today should be the undisputed light heavyweight champion. But again, congrats to Artur Beterbiev. He did fight a very spirited, resilient fight. Like, we saw a lot of what makes Beterbiev tick, right? He is one of the most destructive forces in all of boxing. He's got a relentless pursuit. I just thought that he was outclassed, outboxed. Bivol was just rocking his head back with those combinations, and it wasn't like Bivol was running. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. in the comments. And I do hope that we discuss this in a live chat in the next couple of days, if not later today. We'll see sometime this week though. Yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. And we will also talk the undercard, where I will just make a quick note. I didn't do a prediction video. I wanted to, but wasn't able to get to the prediction video on Fabio Wardley versus Frazer-Clarke. I was likening that fight to the part 2 and part 3 of, I don't know if y'all remember this, but Brandon Bam Bam Rios versus Mike Alvarado. I feel like there's certain fights where it's a slugfest. It's back and forth, tit for tat, and both guys are just beating on each other. And then in the rematch between Alvarado, because Brandon Rios stopped Alvarado like in the 7th round or 8th round of their first fight, Mike Alvarado outboxed the slugger in a great fight and won a decision in the rematch. But that rematch, because Alvarado had to box his butt off, but still took so much punishment from Bam Bam Rios, I thought that those 2 fights for Mike Alvarado against Rios took enough out of Alvarado to where he was never the same fighter after that, right? So he got stopped by Provodnikov, lost a decision to Marquez, got stopped in the trilogy fight against Brandon Rios. I was kind of thinking, even though Frazer-Clarke kind of outboxed a little bit, I mean, it became a slugfest, but it was that Frazer-Clarke wasn't as big a power puncher as Wardley, but Wardley wasn't as good a boxer as Frazer-Clarke. And Frazer-Clarke, you know, should be the better sweet scientist in the rematch. I was just thinking maybe the punishment that Frazer-Clarke took in that first fight might show itself in this rematch, to where we don't get anything close to resembling the 12-round fight of the year contender, even though the fight of the year has to be Fury versus Usyk. There are no two ways about that, in my opinion. But I didn't think that this rematch was going to look like that first fight between Wardley and Frazer-Clarke. But I didn't think that it was just going to be one punch changing everything. And that's what it was. Wardley just caught Frazer-Clarke with an overhand right, rocked Frazer-Clarke. By the end of the fight, you know, he got swarmed shortly after that. And Frazer-Clarke was looking good boxing wise in the beginning. He was getting that jab out there. He was managing range. And also I was thinking, I do think that Wardley's going to stop Frazer-Clarke. But then I saw the weigh-in and I'm like, damn, 30-pound advantage? Last time it was like a 20-something pound advantage. This time it was like a 30-something pound weight advantage for Frazer-Clarke. And so I was thinking, damn, that's a lot of weight to give up. Maybe Frazer-Clarke is onto something, but I still thought that Wardley was going to get it done. But as I was watching the first round, I didn't think he was going to get it done quite like that. He swarmed him after hurting him, dropped him along the ropes, and the ref was counting, but Frazer-Clarke's like face was turned where his jaw looked like he was, I don't know, like I don't like to make light of things that appear to be neurological injuries, but it almost looked stroke like somebody having a stroke or something, where they have or you know, the Bell's palsy, where you don't have control of one half of your face, and so when you talk, only one side of your mouth is really moving. Like Frazer-Clarke looked messed up along the ropes neurologically. And then he eventually kind of got up and got sat on a stool. He was on the stool for a long time. He ended up getting up and kind of wobbling over to Wardley to congratulate him. And this was a first round knockout, by the way, for those that don't know. But Frazer-Clarke was walking over to Wardley, and I'm looking at Frazer-Clarke's head, and it looked like he had a dent in the side of his head around his temple area. I don't know if it was because he had a fattening above it, so it was like an optical illusion where it looks like a dent when really it's a swelling, but something looked like it caved in on one side of his head. And I'm like, damn. So yeah, this was a huge win for Fabio Wardley. I hope Frazer-Clarke's okay. And I hope that these 2 fights, I don't know how they can't do something to your career, but I hope that he's not too damaged after that first classic of a 12-round slugfest. And then from this devastating first round knockout. It wasn't a put you to sleep knockout, but it was like my eyes are open, but I don't know what's going on and I can't move, but I'm kind of sitting along the ropes and and my body's not responding to what my mind should want it to do, but I don't even know if his mind was right. I don't know. He looked messed up from that first punch and then from the combination, especially the finishing sequence, because it was like they tied up for a second and the ref didn't like break them up. So Fabio Wardley had a second to like wait for Frazer-Clarke to kind of allow him to create just enough space to let another couple hard punches go. And that finishing sequence looked like he just got all of it. Like they say in baseball, if you wrap your hands around the ball and it just takes off, they say he got all of that. And I thought that Fabio Wardley got all of that in that finishing sequence. But yeah, let me know what you thought about that one as well in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.